Welcome to the seventh and final episode of the Vandenberg Coalition's limited series, China and the Homeland. I am your host, Thor Mortensen. In this series, we speak with guests about China's growing influence in the United States, how it affects everyday Americans, and what we can do to stop it. This is an all-hands-on-deck crisis, and we need state governments in on the most critical fight of our lifetime. Over the course of this series, we have spoken with experts, practitioners, policymakers, and legislators about the threats the Chinese Communist Party poses to the American homeland through their malign influence in universities, their grip on critical infrastructure and supply chains, and their ability to steal Americans' pension funds. Now that we have laid out the background and the current state of play, we're going to use this last episode to discuss what the future of the CCP's campaign in the United States will look like and what that means for our ability to implement policies that can counter the Chinese threat. To help us dissect all of this, we're thrilled to be joined by former Ambassador Joseph Cella, who recently launched his own exciting initiative to take on China at the state level. Ambassador Cella served as the United States ambassador to Fiji, Kiribati, Nauru, Tonga, and Tuvalu from 2019 through 2021. He is founder and principal of the Pontifex Group, founder of the National Catholic Prayer Breakfast, and a co-founder of In Defense of Christians and Fidelis. Most relevant for this podcast, in 2023, he co-founded the citizen-led Michigan-China Economic Security and Review Group, where he serves as its director, and this year founded Secure Our States Coalition, an organization dedicated to strengthening the resilience of state and local leadership against China's strategic efforts to influence U.S. policies and weaken our nation. Ambassador Cella, thank you so much for joining us on this grand finale of China and the Homeland.
Great being with you, Thor. I appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate your leadership, and I hope to end on a very high note, being the bookend of your series of 7.
I have no doubt that you will. So in our previous episode, we spoke with 2 legislators, one of whom I know you know quite well, William Bruck, in your home state of Michigan, also
Good
our
man.
namesake, Arthur Vandenberg's home state, very proudly. So both of our guests, Representative Bruck and Senator Valerie Hodges in Louisiana, had started their careers serving abroad in different ways. Representative Bruck militarily and Senator Hodges in the ministry. So I wanted to hear a little bit in the beginning of this episode about how your worldview and your dedication to country and perspective in addressing the threats of foreign adversaries began with your diplomatic service, or earlier than that, in the Indo-Pacific, in China's backyard, and how that's developed the work that you're doing now in addressing in our American homeland the threat of the CCP.
Yeah, great question, Thor. I would say that before you go out to post as a diplomat, you read in on various things. You get briefings. So, and then apart from that, you're cognizant of the region certainly, and tracking the comings and goings. So, I certainly, as a student of history, going back to Captain Cook's times of the explorers to World War II history and Cold War history throughout the Indo-Pacific, just sort of passively following it out of interest. China swam into the ken of the Indo-Pacific, and the threat became known. Certainly was read in on it, tracking it actively, really, since I would say the late stages of the Cold War as a student at Hillsdale College. So their malign presence and activities were on the way, evident upon my arrival, sort of day one things. And day one, I arrive and I see a Chinese satellite tracking ship in the port of Suva, intel gathering. There is a towering tower next to the embassy that just shouldn't be there, and places out of order. There was a Friendship Plaza in downtown Suva, nearly 30 stories, that had an eye-line shot to our residence. So, there's a lot of in the non-private sector that China has. There were projects involved, such as the Friendship Plaza, that really track some underhanded, I would say, malign activity within it, as well as another private sector, quote unquote, developer on Malolo Island who blew up a reef and tried to skip town, but ultimately were held to account. So I really didn't want to let that awareness and experience of China's malign influence go to waste. Certainly came back and saw their ways domestically and used it as a fulcrum to speak to how their threat, their tentacles range from Beijing and deep into the Indo-Pacific and certainly onto our shores here in the United States, and have experienced it up close and personal in Michigan.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of from my own perspective, in the last year and a half or so, I've been on vacation both to Panama City and to New Zealand. And the first thing you see going into downtown Auckland or downtown Panama City, coming from the airport in Panama City, is a big tower that says Bank of China on it. So it's definitely, right there in that neck of the woods. And so going now in the last 5 years that you've been stateside, in this series we've talked about the United Front and China's malign influence campaign and infiltrating higher academia, critical infrastructure, supply chains, and pension funds, like I mentioned in the introduction. So, in those 5 years that you've been stateside, what are the areas that you've seen that China has moved into that are most alarming to you?
Yeah, so I'll talk firstly about my great home state of Michigan. It is a first in a nation moment what we had going on here through Governor Whitmer and other government and business elites decided that it would be a good idea in the middle of COVID to lather up a couple of CCP tied companies to pursue these fantastical projects created under the guise of economic development and seemingly benign business deals and jobs and all things puffed up and what they would bring through Goshen and cattle. Goshen, a lithium-ion battery manufacturer, has they require their employees to take oaths of fealty to the Chinese Communist Party. Cattle is a blacklisted Chinese Communist Party tied company. They're in the licensing deal, quote unquote, with Ford, trying to get their project off the ground to manufacture battery storage systems that were once destined for EVs. I think that's going to go sideways even more. So anyway, really textbook influence operations, and nobody was doing anything in the state legislature. Nobody in the congressional delegation eventually caught up to it and started painting with a bright light. And it's been highly consequential. First in a nation moment in that it was the first time that elected officials have been targeted for recall based on their malign engagements with a Chinese Communist Party tied entity. Reed Goshen, and there was another defeat of a couple of other officials in the other city where cattle is near. So the proof of concept was made in terms of our leadership in linking up with the rebels, if you will, behind the lines, the patriotic rebels, to counter them who were really left out to dry for too long. And it was an honor to come by their side, who had the hardest job out of anyone in this process.
So we just kind of talked about identifying some areas, both cattle, Goshen, EVs, batteries, that sort of thing that's happened in the last 5 years. Where are you seeing as we start to identify those areas? I feel like what I've learned in the year or so that I've kind of started in this world is that once you find the CCP in one area, they're already moving on to the next. So are you keeping your eyes on any other industries that you think that they're going to move into in the next 5 years? How do those industries need to respond? How are the CCP's methods going to change in identifying the next target?
Another important question, and I think if you look at just sort of a short arc of history here after the Cold War, really since China opened with Nixon in 1972, I think we've gotten very comfortable with cheap products in great amounts from China, and the convenience consumer culture has really driven it. However, we have, I think, had a gauzy-eyed view on the nature of the Chinese Communist Party and what was afoot. I mean, soon after China opened up, they were uh, they were conducting espionage. Uh, uh, conducting intellectual property theft. They were reverse engineering munitions. And it really went downhill from there. And their tentacles really have spread throughout the world and right down into the States through United Front work, malign operations. So I would just say that it is imperative that we look at this totality as the first Cold War is over with the Soviets, second Cold War right now is on with China, and our footing for years, unfortunately, Thor has not been commensurate with the threat. And we need to get there on a whole of society, whole of government basis. Great people like Congressman John Molinar, chairman of the Select Committee, is doing noble work there to identify and counter in his way on the federal level. But critical work remains on the state level, and states are equipped and can, like Representative Bruck is exemplary doing when it comes to drones, to spot these threats and counter them. And while honoring the supremacy clause, you have the 10th Amendment where states can do certain things. So I think it's really it's a two-pronged thing where we both sort of do an audit, do an assessment of where we're at. China is in our midst in any number of sectors and strata. What do we need to do to sanitize things and to provide for the common defense, to shore up our defenses, to get on the footing commensurate with the threat? And certainly, there's no shortage of opportunities such as drones, such as these cellular technologies that are migrating into homes that also pose a threat. Any TV that has its origins in China can be a listening device. We've worked with State Representative Luke Meerman to engage against the notion of Chinese EVs being imported into Michigan, banning them. So there is more, I would say, housekeeping to do than there are new and emerging technologies, but we can't keep our eyes lose our sight off of those either, because there'll be plenty and certainly more to come. But a lot of housekeeping really to do right now.
Awesome. So you mentioned how you've kind of worked with some representatives in Michigan a little bit in the last answer, and talked kind of about how the industry and just America as a whole needs to start adjusting and keying into what's going on here. Can you drill a little bit more into how state governments, specifically executives, legislatures, should be responding to these changes and developments in the world as in regards to the CCP as we get further and further into this second Cold War you referenced?
No shortage of opportunities. And you look at some good governors that are doing good work, whether it's Governor Abbott in Texas, Governor Sanders in Arkansas, Governor DeSantis in Florida. And where you don't have a particularly friendly governor in Michigan, you have state legislators doing it. So I think it is really imperative, again, to get that whole of society, whole of government engagement. It really starts with education and information. To civil society, to, again, all sector and strata there. And with that, you can reach all the way down into the local level, following guidelines that have been given by the FBI, the NCSC, Intelligence and National Security Body, on what to do and what not to do. And not take two things lightly if your resident CCP tied entity who comes in seemingly benign to strike a business deal. So whether it's legislative, regulatory, or through executive orders, there is a quiver available for action to happen. And certainly in the political realm, I will tell you that after our engagement against the Goshen deal and the cattle deal, there was just over 72% of Michigan residents were opposed to any notion of taxpayer funding, subsidies, credits for an entity that is tied to the Chinese Communist Party. We saw a title change with this being used as fodder in the political campaign cycle of 2024, very efficaciously, as I mentioned in the recalls. and that is again a part of that public education information and critical to keep on utilizing that. So those are the items in the quiver, and it's just a matter of scaling the engagements with those officials and citizens to really make a difference and paint a bright light on Chinese Communist Party and their malign ways.
Tell us a little bit more about the work that you've done, both with the Michigan-China Economic Security and Review Group the last couple of years, and then also what you're hoping to achieve with this new initiative that you've launched in the last couple months here, Secure Our States Coalition. Where did that originate, and what are the goals with that?
Yeah, just a little bit of a backdrop. So in early 2023, the Detroit News did a great expose article about these deals with these CCP tied companies, Cattle and Goshen, led by government and business elites here, championed, concocted by Governor Whitmer. And they were hushed, they were rushed, they were wrapped in binding and punitive non-disclosure agreements, 10 or 15 years. And again, defying all of the directives that our national security and intelligence agencies gave, saying, listen, these are not benign business deals. Ask questions. Don't have non-transparent things. And these things were as murky as they get, not to mention the other malign activity that was underway. And no due diligence, no strict scrutiny, also advised by the National Security Intelligence agencies. So I reached out to my former ambassador, Peter Hoekstra, now ambassador to Canada. Hoekstra, he insists on being called Ambassador Hoekstra. And I said, look, Pete, nobody's doing anything. I said, we need to jump into this. I said, I'll need you as like principal advisor, and I'll be the director. And I nudged him. He was a little bit busy. And I said, I'll do the heavy lift and need you there for your expertise as a member of Congress, Intelligence Committee chairman. He says, okay, I'm in. And we went off and ran hard for 2 years. It took off a little bit organically, but we linked up with those patriotic rebels, as I mentioned, in both areas in Big Rapids, Michigan, with cattle, and in Big Rapids was Goshen, and then in Marshall, Michigan, it was cattle, and great people, hard jobs, difficult times, but fruitful. And in those 2 years, we had proof of concept. So really, we transitioned from people were calling us wanting more help, advice, counsel, and with that proof of concept, we transitioned the Michigan-China Economic Security Review Group into Secure Our States, because it was the demand, the China threat extends beyond Michigan's borders, and we will stay on mission in a citizen-led, citizen-focused basis in the model that we do with Michigan-China Economic Security Review Group, and hope to continue to have an impact.
Leaning in a little bit to your federal experience, and then also, since you mentioned ambassador, how can federal government, in your view, help more with guiding the states in supporting the national security and defense? Because what we found in the last 6 episodes is that there are people on the state level, the hardworking people you referenced, who want to participate in this, who want to help bolster our defenses from the malign influence of the Chinese Communist Party. So just thoughts there on federal state cooperation.
Yeah, I think that, again, they have a unique perch. Some members of Congress have access to things in terms of intelligence, though they can't share it, but they can offer just general advice and counsel to the locals to affirm where they're at, and have them realize these pain points that exist within their states, whatever the sector, whatever the strata, and advise them on what to do. So I know that linking up has happened with the Select Committee and Michigan legislators, bearing great fruit, and I think that ongoing collaboration is important. I mean, you look just at the University of Michigan. in the last 2 or 3 years, it is a telltale sign of like, if this is going on in one university, what else is going on? And a couple of others are being tracked. In Michigan, you had 5 University of Michigan graduate students surveilling Operation Northern Strike, where Taiwanese troops were present in 2023. They were charged by the FBI. What did they do? They skipped town, never to return, skipped town to China. And then subsequent to that, we have had researchers and other students at the University of Michigan trying to smuggle in biological material and other pathogens that were very dangerous. And it's man and woman duo, and if I recall correctly, there were 2 women that were tagged, I think, by ICE or DHS, and the men in the picture skipped town, though charged, and again back to China. They were charged, and I think probably didn't have the book thrown at them as they should, and that I would think, in terms of federal reform, something that could be done to really stiffen those penalties, make it sting, and have those that are here look over their shoulder. And so I think that kind of like, for lack of a better word, is sort of like a mentorship and encouragement by those that are uniquely positioned. And I think it would make their job easier if they could delegate some things that constitutionally the states are equipped uh, uh, to do and should, because again, this is a whole of society, whole of government. It hasn't been there, and again, we're still catching up. This is just, again, we're a big, beautiful country, and I think a year to look back on the blessings of our liberty that we've enjoyed over the 250 years. Part of that charge in the preamble to the Constitution is to provide for the common defense. And no more important time, I think, than now to really seize this occasion, understand it as a patriotic duty to, I would say, fortify our footing commensurate with the threat that's out there from the Chinese Communist Party and its appendages and agents and other operatives they have.
So bringing it back now to the state level, as we sort of come to our final prognoses or plans for the future here, what are some concrete steps you would like to see the individual states take in the next decade or so to confront China?
We might have to do another segment, Thor, uh, but to cover that voluminous topic. But I would just say again, uh, each state should look at itself, all sectors and strata, uh, private sector, public sector, find the pain points and triage them. Again, I think that integral to this is really education and information, and that's part of the role we play. We launch with a very hard-hitting animated video that shows the nature of the threat of the Chinese EV, and they are basically mobile vacuum cleaners. And other countries know the threat as well. Michigan's the auto capital of the world, in a shifting market, certainly, but still plays an integral role. But uh, uh, Poland, Britain, and Israel have either banned EVs on or near their military bases for a reason. So if you look at just the drone activity recently, it's another thing to not take too lightly. So I think education and information, and that could be done by organizations like ours, like yours, uh, the congressional delegations teaming up with state legislators and conferring and collaborating. And they're back in their states more often than the congressional delegations are. So I think they're uniquely tried. It's kind of uniquely presented to tackle this like a local control thing. The less intervening bodies, the better. And they're on the ground, boots on the ground, not traveling as members of Congress do. So I think they're uniquely equipped and positioned. So I think really you look at it, anything from agricultural land, proximity to military bases, higher education, et cetera. It's a long list, and we're happy to take this on and continue our good work.
So as we conclude the series here on this on this last question, I'm going to ask you two prongs of it. First is, we always ask why. Why does this all matter? Why should it matter to state lawmakers, policymakers, and average citizens on the national level, but really on the state and local level as well? And then since this is kind of a dreary topic, as our audience has learned over the last 7 episodes or so, what gives you hope to going forward?
Gosh, what a great way to end. So I'm going to quote the now retired Navy Admiral Mike Studeman, who in February of 23 gave a magnum opus speech at AFC West. It's kind of like a collaboration mix networking session between private industry and government and military leaders. So he gave a great talk, and I encourage you to watch it if you haven't already, and your viewers. But his money phrase in that, he's and Studeman wrote his master's thesis, I think, at the Naval War College on China. He speaks Mandarin, so he knows it, and was head of Office of Naval Intelligence when he gave this speech. And he may have said too much, and thus he wasn't in that post for too long, unfortunately. But great speech, and I will forever cite it and praise him, thank him for it. And his quote was this. He says, "The China problem is greater, more gigantic than can be understood or appreciated." So true. We, for whatever reason, I think we become addicted to China, Chinese connections, money, cozy relationships, and we haven't really been transparent. I mean, there is more that we could be communicating without jeopardizing national security, just communicating the nature of the threat and that it's manifested and how it's manifested for people to know. Again, that very important public information, public education component. So I think that that can't be overstated. I think that could be the North Star governing citizen engagement, organizational engagement, all levels of government engagement, whether state or federal, as we really get after this. So as I let off, I mean, people are kind of almost afraid, I would say, to call a spade, if you will, and recognize China for the threat that it is. You have people say, well, near peer competitor, pacing threat. I mean, I really think that they are an adversary and should be recognized as such and called as such. They are certainly hostile towards us. And if you look at some of the threats Xi Jinping has made himself, it's not a stretch. It's quite it's apt description. So I think that in this second Cold War that we're now in with China, we need to have our footing in all sectors and strata, so that it's commensurate with that threat. And again, public education, information, the political arena, policy arena, and engagement through civic groups like yours, like ours, to fight the good fight. And I don't think this fight will be going away anytime soon. Chinese Communist Party, the government of China since 1949, and they're suffering some challenges here now. You look at their birth rate; they have zeros at both ends, and it puts them in a very precarious position. So, I think that they're certainly in recent weeks feeling a unique squeeze in light of the kinetic engagement against Iran. So we'll have to see, but vital that we fight the good fight and think creatively, be nimble and creative, considering how deep and broad they have embedded themselves within the United States of America.
Well, we definitely always make fighting the good fight our mantra here at the Vandenberg Coalition, and we're very glad to have partners like you, Ambassador Cella, and we very much thank you. This series is certainly now complete with your participation today. So I think that we have a great series that will be very helpful for our audience of state lawmakers and then just patriots who care across the country. So thank you for joining us today.
Honor to be with you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely.
God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to China and the Homeland. a production of the Vandenberg Coalition. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, leave a review, and tune in again as we explore the role of states in confronting the China challenge. Also, please follow our account on X @VandenbergCo, visit www.vandenbergcoalition.org, and subscribe to our weekly newsletter, Beyond the Water's Edge, to keep up to date on all our other projects. Until next time, I'm Thor Mortensen, and this has been China in the Homeland.